Now that the dust has settled on the NBA's trade deadline, and we've seen the new-look teams in action for a few matchups now, things are becoming more and more clear regarding how the league is going to shake out come playoff time. There's still obviously a lot of basketball left to be played, and a lot needs to be sorted out between now and the start of the playoffs, but we have a good idea which teams have done what we needed to do to put together a group capable of accomplishing their goals, and which teams have gotten themselves into a bit of a mess, which brings us to today's video. Today we'll be discussing the 4 teams right now that seem to have no idea what they're doing, and have cost themselves a chance at both current and future success because of the decisions that they have made. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team we'll be discussing today that is showing signs that they have no idea where to take their team right now is the Chicago Bulls. The worst place you can be in the NBA is stuck in the realm of mediocrity, and the Chicago Bulls seem to love how cozy they are in that realm. I understand it isn't easy to admit defeat when your plans don't come into fruition, but there's literally no denying at this point that the Bulls' current core of talent is not good enough to accomplish anything significant together. They started the process of being all in during the trade deadline of 2021 when they traded for Nikola Vucevic, and then brought in DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, and Lonzo Ball to pair with Vooch and Zach LaVine, hoping that would be a group capable of competing with the best that the East had to offer. It very briefly looked like it could be something to do just that in 2022 when they were in first place in the East for the first half of that season, but they ended up drifting off, getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs that year. Lonzo Ball has been hampered by injuries ever since, and the team's trajectory has been sinking more and more every year, maxing out as a play-in team at best. At this point, it just feels like they're desperately clinging to a dream that will never ever happen, and they're in denial about the fact because, funnily enough, when I mentioned that they acquired Vucevic at the 2021 trade deadline, they have not made a single deadline trade since that deal, and the GM has even been quoted saying he doesn't believe trade deadline trades are all that beneficial, which may only emphasize the fact that they are not quite sure what they're doing. The entire basketball world knows they need to commit to a rebuild and to unload the players that don't have long-term futures there for assets that could help them down the line, but instead they chose not to do anything at all at the deadline this year. DeMar DeRozan is a free agent this summer, so he absolutely should have been someone they looked to have traded, but overall, they're pushing themselves further and further into the mediocre tier with the decisions that they're making. The next team we'll be discussing that has been making very questionable decisions for their goals lately is the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are a team that dominated the NBA landscape for nearly a decade, with the core of Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson being at the heart of it, and even Andrew Wiggins came in and helped rejuvenate their dominance for one more title run, so of course there's a level of loyalty there for that group of guys. You want to do right by the players that got you to the top of the mountain, but at the same time they continue to emphasize the fact that they want to do whatever they can to remain in contention for as long as Steph Curry is playing at an elite level. And the fact of the matter is that they are squandering one of Curry's few remaining dominant seasons left with their decision making this year. The Warriors have started to pick up their level of play a bit as of late, but on the season as a whole they're still in just 10th place in the Western Conference standings and seem destined for an appearance in the play-in tournament, where they likely have to go the long way just to secure a playoff spot, if they even succeed in doing that. On a game-to-game basis, there has been a lot of frustration over Coach Steve Kerr sticking with his veteran guys like Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, despite their struggles, and also despite players like Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski often providing more impactful minutes. The Chris Paul addition has not given them the boost that they were hoping it would give them, and we've seen on way too many occasions Steph Curry give a Herculean effort only for the team to come up short and lose. They didn't make a single notable move to help themselves for the final stretch of the season either at this year's deadline, sticking with this past their prime core and ultimately possibly wasting one of Curry's best seasons left. The next group that really doesn't seem to know what they want to do with themselves moving forward is the Atlanta Hawks. After making the conference finals in 2021, the Hawks are another team that have been on a steep decline ever since, and despite making aggressive moves to get themselves back into that level of contention, nothing has worked. They've been a first-round exit in the playoffs in each of the last 2 years, and now they're in 10th place in the East, barely clinging to the final spot in the play-in tournament that they're pretty unlikely to make it out of, to even make the playoffs this season. Trae Young is still doing what he's always done. He's one of the most productive scorers in the association, while also ranking second in the NBA in assists per game this year, making him one of the most productive offensive forces in the league. With that being said though, it's been tough for the Hawks to put together a group that fits well alongside him and his high usage play style that can also help the team win games, and that's where their clueless decision making has come into question. When they traded for DeJounte Murray 2 years ago, the fit always felt a bit questionable, despite him being a clear upgrade talent-wise. In theory, he was expected to give them a much-needed defensive boost, while also taking some of the burden of running the offense off of Trae Young, but the reality has been that a lot of their play together has been a your turn, my turn type of thing, since neither are great at making an impact off the ball, and they both prefer to have the ball in their hands to orchestrate things as point guards. They also drafted Onyeka Okongwu in the lottery back in 2020, and despite his clear progression and ability to impact games at a high level, especially on defense, they still choose to start Clint Capella over him when healthy. DeJounte Murray was a hot name many expected to be traded at this year's trade deadline, but he stayed put. Clint Capella was also someone that had interest on the trade market, but he also stayed put, and the team is still mediocre at best. And now, there are rumblings of Trae Young potentially being the next superstar to force his way out via trade, so their once promising future has been severely limited because of their inability to capitalize on their early momentum. And finally, the last team we'll be discussing today that doesn't seem to know which direction to take their team right now is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers, out of every team on this list, make me the most confused by their actions this year. If there was ever a player who defined the term urgency, it's LeBron James, who has always historically gotten what he wants from his team decision-wise, because for the most part he knows what he needs around him to win basketball games. LeBron-led teams have a long track record of making moves at the trade deadline that can turn the team's season around, with the most recent example of it being just last year, when they went from a fringe play-in team to a group that made it to the conference finals. And based on how frustrating and inconsistent the Lakers have been this year, the expectation was that they would do something similar at this year's deadline. Instead though, they did absolutely nothing, essentially banking on the return of Gabe Vincent and Cam Reddish to save their season. I will say that the team has been playing better as of late, and specifically Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell are producing better now than they were during the team's early season struggles, but it's hard to buy into a group with iffy depth, inconsistent spacing around the team's stars, and a subpar defense being held together mostly by Anthony Davis. And with LeBron's future with the team being completely up in the air, you would have figured that they would go all out to give him one last run at things. But with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these teams and the directions that they're going right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.